Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, episode number 150. To be a filmmaker, you have to lead. You have to be psychotic in your desire to do something. People always like the easy route. You always have to push to get something different. Danny Boyle.
Broadcasting from the back alley in Hollywood, it's the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive as an indie filmmaker in the jungles of the film biz. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome, my Indie Film Hustlers, to the 150th episode of the Indie Film Hustle Podcast. I am your humble host, Alex Ferrari. Now, today's show is sponsored by Video Blocks. And if you guys are looking for stock footage, After Effects templates, motion graphics, Video Blocks is the site, man. I've been using them for years now. I use some clips of theirs in my movie This Is Meg for some stock footage. And this month alone, they're launching a new crazy collection of hundreds of new Unreal clips, including space, virtual reality, deep water, fantasy, and sci-fi footage. All of that comes free with your subscription, and it is a limited time. And you also get free 4K clips with your membership at no cost. And Video Blocks is now giving you 7 days of free downloads. Download a ton of stuff for free. Check it out, see what's going on with it. And remember, whatever you download during those 7 days is yours for free, royalty free forever. So definitely give them a shot. So head over to videoblocks.com/indie, I-N-D-I-E. That's videoblocks.com/indie for the Indie Film Hustle special discount price. And today's show is also sponsored by Distribber. If you guys are trying to get your movies or feature films or even shorts onto Netflix, Hulu, Google Play, iTunes, Fandango, or any of the major streaming services, Distribber finally lets you in without having to go through a traditional distributor. And you keep 100% of all the revenues and your rights. So if you want more information, head over to indiefilmhustle.com/sellmyfilm. That's indiefilmhustle.com/sellmyfilm. So guys, I know it has been a bit of a weak podcast schedule the last few weeks. It has been crazy for me. I've been trying to get at least one out over the last couple of weeks. But now I'm back. I'm still crazy, still busy, but I'm out of production now. I was blessed to direct a new series for Legendary Pictures Digital and The Nerdist called The Space Program, which will be coming out, I think, in June sometime. And it was a full 8-episode run of a show. I'm directing it. I'm doing all the editing, color grading, and so forth. It's a lot of fun, and I can't wait to share what we did with you guys. The show is basically a combination of Cosmos meets Mystery Science Theater. So it's a little bit of both, and we had an amazing set we worked with. And I'm going to show you guys some behind the scenes of that coming up in the months ahead. But anyway, I just wanted to give you guys an update on why it's been a little bit rough for me lately on Indie Film Hustle, because I'm only one man. So keep a lookout for that. So today's guest not only has one of the coolest names ever, but a great story about how he made his movie, and more importantly, how he is distributing it through iTunes and his marketing plan and how he got it up there and what he used and all that good stuff. So today's guest is writer-director Brad Rader. He's also an actor, and he made an amazing little film called Kensho at the Bedfellow. I know, it's a very marketable name. We actually joke about that in the episode. But he's actually doing very well. It's done very well in the festival circuit. And now he launched it on iTunes and is also doing pretty well on it. So I wanted to bring this story to you guys so you guys could see how a movie can be made in the independent world and also brought all the way through to iTunes and how he's marketing it. And he has no major marquee stars in the movie. He has great actors, but no marquee stars. The distributors are going to be jumping all over. And we talk a little bit about that as well in the episode. So without any further ado, here's my conversation with Brad Rader. I'd like to welcome to the show Brad Rader. How you doing, man?
Great, Alex. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. By the way, you have an amazing voiceover voice. I'm assuming you do some voiceover work as well?
I haven't really gotten into it as much, although I recently did something, this little series of industrials for Disney where, I kind of play this omniscient character that is warning all of the employees of Disney worldwide about content protection. And I I recently heard they're going to animate the character, so I'll finally get to do my voiceover for that.
Dude, I'm telling you, it's you know as well as I do. That's easy, the easiest money in the industry.
It's true.
It's such easy money. I mean, you just go in, you record your voice. I mean, you got to. It's. I don't want to say it's like super easy in the sense like anyone could do it, but if you can get the work and you actually have a talent for it, my God, it's great.
Yeah, it's good work if you can get it. And I've got a lot of buddies who really they entered into the industry via the commercial and voiceover arena. And,
right.
They're doing just fine.
just good. Anyway, sorry, audience. We kind of got on a tangent there, but
I'm sure there will be many more tangents to come.
Yes, exactly. But Brad is an actor, a director, a producer, a million other things. So, but before we even get started and everything, how did you get into the film business in general?
Well, I've had a lifelong love affair with movies. I mean, my entire life, my childhood room was just covered in movie posters, Die Hard and Star Wars and Raiders of the Lost Ark and all of the films of the 70s and 80s that most of us kind of were inspired by and got us into the industry in the first place. And, as a kid, I would make little movies with friends and did so at summer camp. In fact, recently, there's a Facebook page for this arts camp that I went to called Long Lake, and someone unearthed this film we made based on Raiders of the Lost Ark called Adirondack Jones. And, I was 13 years old. I had braces, but I wore the fedora and this oversized leather jacket, and it's super fun to kind of see all of that stuff and see the journey. Especially in light of my feature, which is just releasing. So wow, I've kind of been doing this a long time.
You know what? I mean, you and I are both similar vintages, so we. It's true. When we get to this kind of point in our life, we kind of look back and go, "Well, shit, I've done a bunch of stuff. I've been doing this for a while."
Yeah, and it's kind of like I like to think about it as a really choiceless type of thing when you're an artist.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, I've got no other choice. I am compelled and obsessed by doing this kind of work.
Is it me? I mean, I've said this on the show a bunch of times. I've tried to jump off this ship because it's such a hard journey. I mean, it is. Yeah. It's brutal. It's absolute. And as an actor, I cannot even imagine what you guys go through. It's even more brutal than for the other side of the camera. So
every time I try to get out, they pull me back in.
Right, exactly. It's like at a certain point, like I've tried to jump off, and I'm like, what else am I gonna do?
Yeah,
so I'm assuming that's similar for you. Like, have you had those moments of those Jesus moments? You're just like, I got to get out of this, and then other times it's just and just like, oh, what the hell am I gonna do? Go get a real job?
Yeah, there's so many ups and downs, not just as an actor, but, any artist, I think, really questions why they're in it, if they want to kind of stick with it for the long haul. And, going off into the wilderness and becoming a meditation teacher for a couple years certainly was an opportunity to explore other areas. And I never really gave it up. I just kind of went on hiatus for a bit. And it's amazing to look back now on how that journey especially catalyzed this film and how I was kind of trying to make it and get it off the ground for years. It wasn't until I just kind of stepped back and focused on something else that I was then able to return and just hit the ground running.
You know what? And it's so funny you say that because you went off to the forest to meditate. I opened up a gourmet shop in Studio City.
I love it.
And that was my meditation for 3 years, which I had my foot still in the business, but exactly what you just said. You gave me a moment to kind of go back. And then when I came back with, hit the ground running. And I'm assuming it was pretty similar in the time frame as well. When you were off in the forest, I was selling olive oil.
Yeah. I mean,
Yours is much cooler.
it's funny. It's so interesting, and in a way, you just kind of sparked an idea, which it relates in the microcosm as well.
Mm-hmm. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
Of the day-to-day activity of an artist or a filmmaker, because meditation especially, or really any practice that someone has to kind of cultivate presence of mind and peace of mind and creativity and adaptation energy, what is it other than stepping away from your day, for 10 or 15 or 20 minutes and re-energizing yourself, kind of plugging into the wall and re-inspiring your equanimity. Mm-hmm. So I like to look at practices like that because this gig can be so stressful. And as filmmakers especially, we have the capacity to just work nonstop. And
because it's a passion, it's obsession. That's why.
Yeah. And it's a really good recipe to get burnt out. So you have to have this mechanism by which you can step away and then return. It's this vacillation of working intensely and then resting intensely.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. And it's just because I think because we're so obsessed that people, I think a lot of times take advantage of us as filmmakers and artists because we're always obsessed. So like, they'll work for free or they'll kill themselves because they just want to be on the project or something like that.
Right. Or in the distribution landscape, which I'm.
Oh, we will get into that. Oh, we will get into the distribution landscape.
We'll get there. Yeah.
Oh, don't worry. And you also went to NYU, Tisch School for the Arts, right?
Yeah, I was at NYU, and it was an amazing experience on so many levels, not least of which because of the colleagues that I met there. Mm-hmm. Some of whom I'm sure you know. I mean, we've got so many friends in common.
It was actually kind of crazy when you rattled off a bunch of people, and that our first few emails together. I was like, Jesus, man, how do we not know each other?
It's so funny. I mean, one of my closest friends and collaborators from NYU is a kid named James Roday, who's another multi-hyphenate actor director. He started on a show called Psych for many years. Yeah, I know. And, he and I run a theater company out here, and there's certainly a lot of amazing actors that have stayed in the business that I met at school. Some of whom are in Kensho in the movie that I just made, but also on the filmmaking side. I was in school with Kyle Newman and Brad Furman. There's a whole bunch of guys that are and girls who are working in the industry, and I'm so happy that they stuck with it because there's just a tremendous amount of talent that comes out of these schools. But as you know, the industry just kind of it beats you up a bit.
Not a bit, my friend. It is. It's like walking into a fight with Mayweather. And you haven't worked out in 20 years or ever thrown a punch.
It's warfare. It really is.
It is. And I hate to use that kind of terminology, but it is like, in the trenches and all this kind of stuff is because it's true. It is kind of a brutal business. And I think nowadays even more so, because when you and I were coming up, it was not nearly as competitive as it is now. I mean, now everybody's a filmmaker and everyone's an actor and everyone's got a YouTube page and everyone's got an Instagram with 1 million followers. And it's a completely different world where we were on the edge. We're not old school. We're not like 70s, 80 filmmakers. We were growing up in that time watching those guys. So, we're more 90s and early 2000 kind of filmmakers where, we had one foot in the old school and one foot in the new school. We're that weird generation that's a hybrid. We didn't grow up with all that technology and all that access, but we understood it. And we also understood what it was like not to have that. So like I remember when I graduated college, I I hadn't even have an Avid. They didn't even have an Avid in there yet.
Wow.
It was not only our editing systems, yes, but an Avid wasn't even there yet. So it was just on the cusp. So
yeah, I mean, when we were making our little videos as kids, we would hook up our two VCRs.
Oh
with
yeah.
cables,
Oh yeah.
and there's always that like 3.5 second delay.
Oh yeah.
You had to factor in when you were editing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, hit record and play. But were you like a high end VHS editor? Did you use a composite or a component cable?
Oh well, I graduated, from VHS to SVHS.
Holy cow, SVHS!
Yeah. And then when there was the optical audio input, that was all the rage.
Holy cow!
And then I really splurged when Mini DV came out.
Stop it!
Yeah, I found a deck that was, and I still have it at my parents' house. One side was VHS, and the other side was Mini DV. And I was like, oh my God, I can actually transfer from VHS to Mini DV.
It's I know everybody listening now is like, wow, these guys are old. But yes, we'll go back down memory lane, and at least we're not talking about 8-track and beta at this point.
Right.
But though beta is actually better than VHS, but
it's true.
So let me ask you, as an actor, because you've worn both hats as an actor and as a director, what do you look for when you're acting in a director?
That's a great question. You really want a collaborator, and everybody's after the same thing. We're trying to capture the truth, and I think a lot of times it depends on the project itself. I mean, in some cases, you want a level of trust so that the director will let the actor experiment, right? Mm-hmm. Because the director always is going to have an opinion. But when he or she is collaborative enough to kind of let the actor run with it for a bit and then potentially steer him or her in another direction, that's always helpful, because then you can kind of get more on the table and more ideas flowing. Even if it doesn't necessarily mean improvising, but there's so many different ways a scene can go. Mm-hmm. And the more that a director can articulate what the vision is and what the tone is, especially, this is a really important point, like understanding what the tone globally of the project is, but also what the tone of each individual scene is, and how it fits into the larger context of what the film is trying to do. Mm-hmm. So those are some kind of broad strokes, and then on set, it's all about communication and I think trust, and actors really want to know that they're being taken care of and
protected,
that they're being protected, and they're able to relax and feel free and creative. Because when an actor feels just nervous or doesn't quite understand what is trying to be achieved, mm-hmm. It just mucks up the creative process.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and a lot of times directors and filmmakers don't realize that actors are putting themselves out there in a very raw way, if they're doing it right, to find that truth, and they're exposing themselves. And if they feel that there's arrows being tossed at them left and right, they're going to shut down and put the defenses up. But if
that's true.
But if they feel the director is creating a safe space for them to be able to do that, where nothing is going to happen to them, and they can freely play in that sandbox that the director's kind of put, the director's the wall from everybody else around you, and then you guys can kind of play. I think that's what makes a great collaboration. Do you agree?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah.
Now 100%. Why did you want to direct? I mean, it's crazy.
It's nuts.
It's absolutely nuts.
The craziest thing that one can decide to do with their time.
Seriously.
I had been working on this project, Kensho at the Bedfellow, for many years, and there was a big learning curve in terms of writing the project. I had never written a screenplay before. I had made, at that point, 4 or 5 films.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now, back to the show.
Including Spring Break Lawyer, which was my first feature, MTV, where I played a kid who gets kicked out of law school and then goes down to spring break and represents all the kids that get in trouble.
Did you direct that, or did you just star in it?
No, it was my first movie, made for TV.
Sure.
Really silly comedy. But, I had made a few of those, a few smaller films, and I really wanted to write something as a vehicle for myself as an actor. Some of the TV work that I had done had plateaued. That was kind of my bread and butter for a while. TV pilots and canceled shows, and any working class actor out here will just have a battlefield full of failed projects. Of course. So I had been working on Kensho for a long time, and I didn't think that I would direct it, but I quickly learned that nobody did it as I would. And I had a bunch of friends who had directed their own projects, and they really encouraged me to do so. And I said, I'll throw my hat in the ring. And I'm so glad I did. I mean, I really got the bug, and it was an incredible experience, although not without its challenges. Wearing so many hats.
I would expect so, sir.
Yeah. We all did on the project. We shot the thing for, a micro budget. It was a $200,000 movie. And so many of the kind of tricks of the trade that we incorporated, I took Stolaroff's class, and
yeah, sure. Mark Stolaroff, friend of the show, No Budget Film School.
Tom Provost, and all those guys really helped this journey. But in addition to all of their tactics, whether it's shooting in locations, of course, that you have, and we went for broke. I mean, we shot in 35 locations all over Manhattan. And we can certainly get into kind of how we stole.
Yeah, I was going to say you stole all of them. Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them came from the meditation community, which is they talk about, working with your tribe and having your tribe as your audience. And after becoming a meditator, this was my tribe, and I found that there were a lot of meditators who were part of these amazing organizations and institutions. And, the guy that created the High Line is a meditator. And I said, hey, listen, we're making this movie. Can we shoot on the High Line? And same happened with the Rubin Museum, where we shot for a day.
Yeah, I saw the trailer. I mean, it looks really. I'm surprised it was such a low budget, because you have a lot of production value, and whoever was your DP did a decent job. I mean, really good job. It looks good.
David Rodriguez is fantastic, and he's a longtime collaborator, also a meditator. We were all meditating on set. My DP and Blake Brewer, my first AD, who was also my lead producer, and that was another way we got away with all that we did, because it wasn't just me wearing multiple hats. Having your first AD know everything that a producer knows was incredibly helpful. I mean, he was my right hand on the set the whole time. And so, infusing the thing with a level of consciousness by either taking time out on set to meditate, or just having a supremely calm, efficient environment where a lot of the crew members were just super chill and like Energizer bunnies. That's how we were able to shoot 29 days.
Wow.
And, 35 locations in 2 cities and 40 speaking roles.
Jesus Christ. On paper, this is a lunacy.
It was nuts. It was nuts. And, I think Sebastian, who also,
yes, friend of the show.
Yeah, Sebastian. Well, Sebastian's also a meditator, of course, and a student. He, I think, originally read the script along with some others, and said, you're nuts. You need to cut at least 20 pages.
That sounds exactly what Sebastian would say, because he's called me nuts multiple times.
Yeah, you need to get rid of 20 characters and at least 20 locations. And it may have been naivete on my part, or just hubris to think that we could pull it off. And it wasn't easy, but I think we did.
I think with that kind of, look, I constantly get told you can't do that, or you can't do that. And it was similar to what Robert Rodriguez. I always go back to Robert's one of my idols. And everyone's like, you can't shoot an action movie, studio action movie for $7 million. Well, he did, and it made it look like it was a $30 or $40 million movie. Mm-hmm. And it's until you're able to continuously break that mold, until people will just go, oh, it's him, he could do that, or it's her, she could do that because she's done it multiple times prior. Mark Duplass, for God's sakes, and what they do, or Joe Swanberg. You can't direct 6 feature films in 1 year. Well, yes, he did. So you can do that. It's all about breaking that mold. But with that said, there is would you agree to have a kind of strategic stupidity in doing certain things? So like, you got to be smart about when you're going to go jump off that cliff. Be strategic about it and make sure you're not just going in there like, I've never been on a cliff, I've never jumped before. Right. You've obviously been around, you've been in movies for a while, you've been an actor, so you've been on sets. So you weren't just literally fresh off the boat when you attempted to do this. So I want to make sure everybody understands that you are a seasoned pro in a lot of other avenues of the business, but this was your first venture into this kind of business, side of business.
I really wanted to surround myself with the best people that I could find. And when you're working at a price, oftentimes that means interviewing and finding kids who really haven't had as much experience as you have. My production designer, this was her first feature, but she had apprenticed a very well-known production designer, and she was ready. She was hungry. Mm-hmm. And so you really have to make educated decisions when you're working with such little money. But you're right that preparation is everything. You've got your preparation and your execution. Mm-hmm. The more you can prepare, including, and it's not just writing out your shot list. And this is why meditation has been so important for me as an artist, because you are prepping your nervous system and your consciousness band and your mind and body to dive in with abandon and be able to execute a lot in a short amount of time and be highly accurate, right? Mm-hmm. And also stay calm under pressure. There's something called the tripartite performance variable that
very, 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 it just rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, it was. There was a study done on meditation, and this is something that went way up in meditators. It's like if you've got an archer, for example, can she be accurate and hit that bullseye, right? 8 times out of 10. Mm-hmm. You add the second variable. Can she do so very, very quickly? She hit that bullseye and do it fast. And then the third variable, can she hit that bullseye quickly and stay completely cool? This is the tripartite performance variable. Mm-hmm. So, you put that in the context of a filmmaker, right, where you've got to shoot 9, 10, 12 pages in a day, right, and not freak out when something goes awry, which it always will.
Of course. I mean, it's called nature and human nature.
Yeah.
Both of those things combined, not a good thing.
Yeah. And so, preparing becomes everything. There's a reason why the most famous book for actors is An Actor Prepares.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
It's 90% preparation so that when you get to that set, and this is the case for a director as well who has a plan, you get to that set and you've prepared so much that you can just play. You're just in the flow, creating and playing, and you've got your plan in the back of your head and the shot list and the schedule. But you're able to bob and weave and just kind of play around with the actors and with the technicians and get what you need, but also get a ton of stuff that you never expected.
Yeah, it's always fascinating to me, like how, like the Duplass brothers and Lynn Shelton and Joe Swanberg, they do their movies because I know from studying them that they do prepare and they have a very structured script, but they kind of just show up and just kind of flow with whatever happens. Whether that be in production, whether that be in the actor's performance, whether that be in the improv of it all. And, I kind of went through that with my first feature, This Is Meg. And it's interesting because I showed my movie to some very established directors and they're like, I could never do that. Like, that's scary as hell to me. Like, I can't not show up and not know what's going to happen that day. But there is something very freeing about that. Do you agree?
I do. I think you want both things.
Right.
I think you want to be prepared, and be as obsessive as you want to be in knowing what you need to get to tell the story.
Right.
But there's so much magic that happens in the moment and so many happy accidents. You're going to get to set and you're going to lose that location. You've got to be ready.
Or it's going to rain, or the power's out, or someone didn't show up. Or
you got to be ready to shoot the thing that you were planning on shooting in that, museum. You got to be ready to shoot it in the alley,
right?
If you have to.
Yep, pretty much.
So I think holding both things, that yin yang really is key. Preparation, but also the nimbleness and adaptability of the present moment. Yeah,
which is kind of, I think, half of what Hitchcock used to do. Hitchcock used to be obviously one of the most prepared directors of all time, but he would not flow on set. Like, it had to be by the numbers, ABC.
Yeah.
But he was also a master of what he was constructing. So I guess it's a different style for every kind of filmmaker and artist in general.
Yeah, true.
Now, pronounce the name of your film again, Kensho?
Kensho at the Bedfellow.
So obviously, very marketable name.
I know. I mean, there's always kind of a song and dance when I'm explaining. It goes something like this. Kensho is a Zen Buddhist term that means awakening. Ken is to see, and sho means one's truest nature. So it translates as seeing one's truest nature, or to awaken. The Bedfellow is a fictional hotel in Tribeca. So we shot in and around the Duane Street Hotel, which is a real hotel in Tribeca. And we made it into the Bedfellow Hotel. And, built a sign and kind of put it over the signage of the Duane Street, and it looks fantastic. My art department did an amazing job. So it's an existential drama about a guy searching for fulfillment in all the wrong places. That's the log line. And it's been an odyssey. not only for my main character, he goes through an odyssey himself, but making the thing.
Well, when was the film finished? It was finished a while ago, right?
Well, we shot in 2013.
Okay.
In the fall of 2013, so 25 days in New York, and then we promptly ran out of money.
How did you finance it, by the way? How did you finance it?
All independent financing.
Okay.
All individual investors, friends and family.
Got
dentists
it.
And
old school. Got it.
Old school.
Edward style. Got it.
Right. And we raised enough to shoot, basically.
Oh, yes.
And the plan was always to do the crowdfunding campaign, which I certainly have opinions about. And I think there's a level of fatigue at this point.
Oh, yeah.
With those types of campaigns. But the idea was to raise our through Indiegogo. And so in the spring, or a few months after we shot in New York, that's when we launched the campaign. So we raised a little bit more money to not only shoot 4 more days, but some more dough for post-production. Then we were in post all of 2014.
Why? Why was it so long?
Well, there were a couple reasons. One was we have some extensive special effects.
Got it.
Another kind of thing that they say, don't
do that.
Film, don't use special effects. Don't use kids
or dogs or animals.
Don't use an animal.
Right.
All of which I threw into the mix.
Sure, why not?
I also opted for a completely original score. I opted for something like 9 needle drops. Music cues.
Oh, Jesus!
I did a 5.1 surround mix.
Sure, of course.
With Odin Benitez, who is also a student and a meditator, and he brought in his whole sound team. So we mixed at Formosa. We mixed on the stage where they mixed The Godfather.
Sure. Why not?
I went for broke with this.
No, you swung for the fences. It sounds like you're swinging for the fences on this one.
Yeah. So the post-production process was very long. There was a lot of ADR we had to do because shooting in New York is always tough. And then we hit the festival circuit in 2015. And, we played 6 festivals. We won 2 Best Feature awards.
Nice.
And these are all kind of like niche festivals, like conscious cinema, which is a term that has been coined in recent years for movies that are spiritual in nature or kind of examine human consciousness and are hopeful and inspirational, but not necessarily documentaries and not necessarily faith-based.
What's that one? Oh God, that really famous one. Not down
Matrix?
down the down the rabbit hole, but it's not down the rabbit hole. Is the other one with Marley
Marley Matlin?
Yes, her. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I can't place it either.
But that movie is that would be the I actually worked on it too. Damn it. But anyway, that one is that's a good example of conscious filmmaking, which it's not it's spiritual, but not faith-based or religion-based, but it examines life a little bit.
Right. Which, one could argue, well, all films do that in a way. But this kind of movement, which I'm happy to be a part of, is really interesting, and I think it's gaining traction. We started at the Illuminate Film Festival with a program they had called the Conscious Cinema Accelerator, which takes a bunch of these films in different stages of development, different stages of the process, and just helps them find an audience. And there's kind of a mentorship program. So it's a really cool community of filmmakers who are, I think, trying to say something with the attention that they have of an audience.
By the way, the movie's What the Bleep Do You Know?
What the bleep do we know?
Yes,
Right,
okay. Yeah. So, sorry, had to do it.
right. Which, yeah, it's a great example of a film that has similar content that really took off. Although they're a doc and we're a narrative feature. It's something that Tom Shadyac said that I really gravitated towards. He's like, listen, if you're going to make a quote unquote spiritual or conscious movie.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
And, it's a narrative. It's got to be exciting. It's got to be sexy. It's got to be entertaining. And I really ran with that. I wanted this. I wanted Kensho to be just as exciting and as entertaining as it was potentially enlightening and inspiring.
And from what I read, I think you've achieved that. So that's good. So you went through the festival circuit for 2 years?
I went through the festival circuit we started late summer, early fall of 2015 through 2016. So our last festival was last fall. And then we had a special screening at the Rubin Museum where we shot for a day. And that was kind of our last public screening, although who knows, we
of course.
But at that point, and I had been kind of looking and trying to navigate the distribution landscape, which was depressing.
Yes, that was why I was asking this whole. That's where I'm leading towards. I wanted to get. I wanted to see what your experience is selling a spiritual style film with some excitement and some action, with no marquee names in it, and I just love to hear what distributors had to tell you, so everybody listening could understand what I preach about on a constant basis.
Yeah, no, you've been dead on in what you've said and what other colleagues have said. It basically comes down to, if you don't play those top 5 or 6 festivals, and even if you do, still. I mean, there are plenty of films that play Sundance that don't get a sale,
or even get any major distribution, or even self distribution. Right. Sometimes it's rough. Right. Yeah, but it helps. It helps if you're in those 5.
Yeah. And there's certainly an idea that, although this could be debated vigorously, that audiences only want to gravitate towards films with actors that they know or they've seen before, which is not really true.
Not any, and I'll agree with you on that. It's not as true as it used to be if you're going down a niche market. Right. If you're trying to do mass appeal, that's probably not the same. You probably do need somebody for a mass appeal movie, but for niche like this is super niche. I think it wouldn't need it as much. So I would agree with you on that.
Right. So I got a lot of very positive feedback, and we got close to Tribeca. The head of programming at Tribeca wrote me to tell me as much, which was the greatest rejection letter I've ever gotten. She's like, "You guys were really close." I was like, "Oh, great.
Really?" That's just like
we debated you guys. Half of us wanted you to play the festival, and the other half were like, "What is this?" But ultimately, distributors don't really care, and a lot of companies really dug the film, but just didn't feel like they could sell it based on the cachet of the festivals we did play, and based on the actors involved. Now, that being said, I mean, my cast is full of Emmy and Tony Award-winning actors, luminaries of the stage. Saw Galja, who starred in Fela, is a titan. And, this guy puts in a performance that is as good as anything I've ever seen. Kaylee Ronayne, who is my co-star, the heroine of the film, I think is going to be a huge star.
Mm-hmm.
And so we might get lucky in terms of really finding our audience once one of us gets a big TV show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's always, yeah.
But ultimately, it got to the point where it was frustrating, and I felt like I needed to move on with my life, especially. So, I met Jason Brubaker, and
friend of the show.
Yeah, and the guys over at Distribber,
friends of the show.
Yeah.
My God, how do we not know everybody? I mean, seriously, how we've not had a coffee?
True.
How we've not had coffee? Seriously,
it's so true.
Did you reach out to Jason, or did you just meet him on the road somewhere?
I ran into him a couple times. I heard him speak about Distribber, and a couple of my other friends who have indie films were kind of circling. And I looked into it, and it seemed to really make sense in terms of, okay, they're going to act as the aggregator between the filmmaker and the platforms. Because let's face it, iTunes and Netflix, they don't want to talk to filmmakers. They don't want to talk to the neurotic.
Oh, God. Can you imagine?
So, the plan became very clear and very intuitive. Let's get on to one platform. In our case, we released on iTunes now 2 weeks ago. And, there was a big preamble and a pre-sale and a lot of our grassroots marketing and social media efforts to launch the thing.
So let's go back for a second. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. So what was the strategy launching to iTunes? Because I'm literally going to be going down this path with Nick and Distribber as well. So I want everybody in the audience to kind of know what your strategy was with iTunes, and did you only launch on iTunes first and then you're launching on other platforms? How did you do the pre-sales? All that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, it's a great question and a great kind of mystery that we're trying to unravel. It's a little bit like the Wild West.
It is very much so.
What seemed the most intuitive was that, okay, there's one way you could go where you release on all of the platforms at once, and or at least all of the platforms that don't have any curating system in place. In other words, your iTunes, your Hulu, one of the Amazon platforms,
Google Play, all those kind of places.
Google Play, right. Exactly. The idea being that you want to give people every opportunity to see it based on their particular preference. We opted to release solely on iTunes first for a couple reasons. One of which, it seemed to have the most cachet, right? Everybody knows iTunes. It also has potentially the highest price point for people who are really ready to go and buy the movie. The filmmaker stands to walk away with the most profit. The split is 70-30.
It's great.
And Distribber, takes an upfront fee per platform.
Which is not that much. It's like $900, $800 per platform. Or you could buy a package of 10 for like $4 or $5,000, something like that.
That's right. It's a really good deal. And the idea was and is to get as much attention on iTunes and channel all of our focus and all of the eyeballs to just one place. If you want to see this movie and you didn't already see it on the festival circuit and you weren't already owed a screener because you donated, which, let's face it, was a lot of people, a lot of my friends got the film for free because they donated $25 or more. So that's another story, like in terms of playing festivals and kind of blowing your wad a little bit by showcasing the movie to everybody you know.
Yeah, don't do that.
Right.
for free.
Yeah, because we played LA and we played New York, and a lot of my friends came to that, and they don't necessarily want to then buy it again on iTunes. But anyway,
Right.
the idea is channel all of that attention towards one platform. And the strategy is then to go after the subscription-based services like Netflix and Amazon Prime, which do curate. And there is not a guarantee that indie filmmakers can get on those platforms.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
Even though for VOD, that seems to be the prize because that's where most of the eyeballs are. I think there are more people that would prefer to watch a movie on Netflix or Amazon Prime, subscription services that they're already paying for, than to go over to iTunes and put down $12.99 or $14.99.
Or even $3.99 to rent it.
Right. So all of that being considered, and especially in light of trying to get Netflix's attention, we thought, all right, let's release on iTunes first and see what we can do there.
And did you do a strategy to kind of do a lot of pre-sales to kind of rev up the placement that you are placed within your subgenre, or even, God forbid, even get it ranked closer to the top 10 or 20 of the main page?
Right. Yeah, that is still the strategy. And I opted to do a month-long pre-sale period, which I'm really glad that I did. A, because you can kind of offer it at a discount. We offered the movie for $9.99 in pre-sale, and now we're selling for $14.99. $19.99. You've got like
that's huge.
X-Men and
Yeah.
So the pre-sale period allowed us to really kind of ramp up, and a lot of movies now, whether it's release of billboards or the trailers, they have a good month of trying to get in your face. And so we used that month to really ramp up our social media presence and email newsletters and rally the troops and the cast and to kind of reach out to their networks. As well, a little hack that people should know is that all of those pre-sales in the month before you go live on iTunes apparently count towards first day of sales. So that when you go live, it's as if, in terms of the algorithms that iTunes uses to kind of boost the title higher on people's lists, they're going to use those pre-sales as kind of those first day sales. So if you do like 100 pre-sales, it looks as if to the algorithm that on day one you've got 100 sales. So
let me ask you a question. Could you share a little bit of rough numbers with us so we kind of get an idea? Are you feel comfortable with that?
Yeah, sure. So we are in the hundreds, and we're trying to and it's hard to tell exactly because it's subjective, or it seems so. There isn't necessarily a formula for what iTunes is going to kind of perk up about. And like you need a certain number to kind of get on new and noteworthy or notable indies, which for your listeners are two places that I think filmmakers can hope to reach or to get on that list. Because when users go onto iTunes to look for a film, there is literally an endless sea of movies in every genre. And on the kind of front home page of iTunes Movies, there are certain sections, especially for indies, that we have the opportunity to kind of be featured on. So it's hard to tell exactly what the threshold is that a filmmaker needs to reach by a certain amount of time. I think there are a lot of factors, not least of which is what's happening in the world and politically in the zeitgeist. And I couldn't have planned this, but we feature in Kensho, among many other things, the refugee resettlement crisis. It's kind of like the B storyline, and the International Rescue Committee.
Yeah, I saw that in the trailer. Yeah,
relocates refugees all over the world, including from Sudan, which is one of the
6.
countries. As part of the travel ban.
Right.
And so all of this is kind of happening while we're releasing the film, which was fortuitous, and I couldn't have planned, but something that I'm very passionate about. So we're also hoping that some of that social relevance is interesting to somebody and might help us in getting more exposure.
So so on your first day, did you get on any of those lists? Because I saw an email. I got magically put on your email list, and and I saw that you were ranked fairly high, and you were with a bunch of what was the actual list that you were on iTunes?
We haven't made it onto one of those premium lists, but there was a little meme that I sent around, and certainly in that newsletter, that I thought was just kind of cool as a film geek, that we were listed in the independent section. And that, that's a whole nother conversation, like films that are considered to be independent.
Not really. You
and I are independent filmmakers.
Yeah. And you got 7 million plus a couple major stars, and it's not independent anymore.
And even Moonlight, which is an incredible movie, and it won the Academy Award.
Was it 1.5? I think it was 1.5, right?
Yeah. The budget.
Yeah, I think it was about 1.5. If that's the number I've heard. It might be more. But
it might be more. Maybe. Yeah. I don't know. But is it really an independent movie? That Brad Pitt produced.
Brad Pitt produced it. Yeah, it wasn't 1.5. Yeah. It wasn't 1.5.
Anyway. So it was just cool last week to kind of be listed next to Steve McQueen and Lars von Trier and my buddy Todd Schatz, who's got a great movie called Lazy Eye. I was like, oh, cool. We're kind of in with these other really talented filmmakers that I admire. But yeah, there are a lot of movies, not only on iTunes, but everywhere. We're kind of competing with, like you said, Instagram videos and YouTube videos.
It's insane. You've got to create and I think that's why a lot of people and a lot of filmmakers at this point should be focusing on niches. As they say, that the riches are in the niches. And it's very true, because that's the biggest mistake I think filmmakers make, is they try to do a broad action movie or a broad market movie, and I'm like, dude, you're not going to make a dent. It's just, but if you focus on, and I always use this example, like if I'm going to make the vegan chef movie, like the vegan chef comedy, romantic comedy, that's what I'm making. You can really niche that down and aim it at that demographic.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
As opposed to 18 through 25 male, like you're not going to hit that demographic. Or meditators, like this is a movie about meditation, let's say. I know this, I don't think Kensho is not about that specifically, but you can easily aim it at that demographic.
It's true. Yeah. I mean, we're not about meditation at all, but we are about consciousness and the nature of fulfillment and life purpose. These are kind of big, some would say esoteric ideas, but they're ideas that people with a yoga practice or a meditation practice, or just interested in self-development and kind of the nature of reality or what they're meant to be doing with their lives, millennials, that's our audience. And I was just given some great advice at the beginning, like know who your ideal fan is. Scott McMahon, who I know you're also.
Jesus Christ, man! Seriously,
Actually,
you
I
know,
don't know Scott personally, but I've been listening to his stuff, and he's great.
He's over at Film Trooper, guys. You got he's friend of the show.
Desmond Devonish too, who I know you.
Yes, as well.
He and I, Desmond and I, met at Film Independent, and he also went to NYU, and we're both exactly the same age, and we kind of met. We're like, oh yeah, I just made a movie. Oh yeah, me too.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
Yeah, I also was in it. Oh yeah, me too. And I directed it. Yeah, whoa, cool. It's fun kind of having all of those, Michael Rubenstone, who you interviewed, who I grew up with.
At Sundance, yeah.
Same boat. And I think you also talked to Jason Schumann, right?
Yes, I talked to. I mean, Jesus Christ.
Schumann and I are buddies. Of course, through Sebastian and Alex Litvak, who's also a student, who's a great screenwriter. But anyway, the advice I got to kind of know your fan and know your audience is really good advice. That I think will really help narrow the marketing, because you're right. You can just kind of shotgun it out and hope for the best. But if you can identify where your fans are, who they are, what they're into, you've got, I think, a much better shot of reaching some eyeballs. Yeah,
I think there's just there's a lot of work involved, and I think that's something that filmmakers don't really anticipate. Like, when you're doing a feature film and you're going to try to do this grassroots, it's going to take time to build up that audience unless you have that audience already. But it can be profitable if you keep the budget low and put in the hours.
Yeah, it's true. It is a grind. It is a hustle. It is an indie film hustle.
That is why I call the show and the website Indie Film Hustle, because man, we're always hustling. We're always getting out there. Now, I wanted to talk to you real quickly about meditation, because, and I know we could probably talk for days about this, but for me, I've had meditation in and out of my life for probably the last 15 years, and I always find it very. When I do tap into it, it's centering and relaxing in a chaotic world. And the more chaotic it becomes for me with all the millions of things that are going on in my life, meditation, I always find that settles me. But my biggest issue, and I think it's a biggest issue for a lot of people who are either trying to get into meditation or not, is your own mind's like, you don't have time for that. You just got to keep going. You don't have time for that. Yeah, keep going. And settling down, even when you do sit down to meditate, just kind of the quieting of the mind and quieting of, centering yourself. Can you talk a little bit about, and I know we're now going off filmmaking, guys, but I think this is very helpful to filmmakers because meditation is a movement, honestly, that's going across the world. And the benefits are even being proven by science at this point in the game, things that the monks have known for millennia.
Yeah.
So can you kind of guide us, no pun intended, guide us a little bit in regards to that for anybody who's interested in meditation, what kind of tips you can do and what kind of meditation you do?
Of course. So I have been practicing a technique called Vedic meditation for about a decade. And I was lucky enough to travel with and apprentice my teacher, a very famous meditation teacher named Maharishi Vyasanand, aka Tom Knowles. And I traveled with him for 2 years. This was kind of my journey in the wilderness.
Got it.
I grew a mustache. I didn't quite grow a full beard, but I did grow a mustache. And he trained me to teach. We went to India, and then later my Jedi training was completed in Bali for 3 months.
So much more exciting than olive oil.
And so I've been teaching this technique now that I love and that has really influenced my life as an artist and as a man. I've been teaching now for 5 years.
Mhm.
Now, there are many, many different techniques of meditation out there. And I think what has contributed to perhaps some of the confusion in terms of, well, I know meditation is good for me, but how do I start? How do I do it? What do I do? A lot of that confusion comes from the different techniques, many of which require focus, concentration, effort. Like you said, sitting down and trying to clear the mind of all thoughts, which is a bit of a misnomer, right? So telling a meditator to clear his or her mind of all thoughts is a little bit like saying, whatever you do right now, don't think of a white polar bear.
Right. Right.
So now, this is not to say that stepping beyond thinking activity and stepping beyond body sensation, right, is not a real phenomenon. It is. It is a beautiful phenomenon where one can saturate themselves in a state of creativity and fulfillment and awareness of simply being aware. This is tremendously useful, I think, for everyone, because it's de-exciting the nervous system and unwinding a ton of stress, but especially for creative people, because you are suddenly that individual wave settling down on this kind of oceanic state of consciousness and really feeling the true profundity of your creative power. So that experience is real, right? Stepping beyond thinking activity is real, but it's not the goal of meditation. And it doesn't happen by virtue of the meditator trying to make it happen. So what we need, and I think what I've found is most useful, especially for a lot of my students who are filmmakers or in the film industry, is something mechanical and incredibly easy to do. Something that allows the meditator to sit comfortably in a chair, which is really important. None of this having to sit perfectly with an erect spine in some sort of pose, full lotus position. None of that. We want to be absolutely comfortable, back supported, and practicing a very, very simple, nuanced, sophisticated, elegant, but counterintuitive technique. It's not what most people think it is, especially if what they think meditation involves concentration and clearing the mind of all thoughts. So giving people a very specific learned technique, and when they learn this from a Vedic meditation teacher like myself or my colleagues, it's done so in 4 sessions over 4 days, typically, 90 minutes each day, so that you're completely self-sufficient and absolutely trained by the end of those 4 days to be able to do it on your own without an app, without having to listen to some, Indian music or lighting incense or drinking kombucha or wearing mala beads or anything like that.
Nothing wrong with kombucha. I'm just saying.
There's nothing wrong with it.
I'm just joking.
Especially the ginger ale. That's
that's my favorite. Funny you should say that's actually my favorite.
So good. So, giving people a very specific technique to practice and then making it a part of their routine, just like eating and sleeping and brushing your teeth and showering, and giving them an opportunity to really rest the body deeper than sleep. What a lot of people don't realize is that these states of meditation that we can mechanize ourselves into are deeper rest than horizontal sleep.
Yeah.
And this is where we see all of the studied benefits: lower blood pressure, cholesterol, lower risk of heart disease, normalizing of sleeping patterns, greater energy, productivity. It's by virtue of resting the body very, very deeply and removing onboard stress from deep within the system. And that's it. And it affects almost every area of our lives, our creativity, our relationships, our responsibilities. There's really no aspect that it doesn't touch.
And it does kind of open up the creative channels and allows you to flow a little bit more as a writer or as a filmmaker in general.
I mean, it's unbelievable, and not only will ideas come to you in meditation, something that David Lynch, a famous filmmaking meditator has coined.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
And by the way, Stanley Kubrick and George Lucas and Clint Eastwood and Martin Scorsese. And
these guys all meditate?
On and on. They're all meditators.
I've studied Kubrick for years. I've never once heard meditation come up. That's really interesting.
Yeah. And it's not only that ideas come to you while you're practicing, but there is an integration process that happens with states of consciousness whereby your waking state and the eyes open state becomes more creative and intuitive. And that's really where you need it. I mean, when I was writing the movie, I would get so many ideas in yoga class. I would have to have like a pad of paper next to my yoga mat. And my yoga teacher would just kind of roll her eyes every time I got down from downward facing dog to jot something down because I couldn't turn it off. I could not turn off all of the ideas that were just naturally flowing spontaneously, I think, from regular practice of these ancient techniques.
That's fascinating. And I know we could talk about meditation and the filmmaking and creative process for days. Maybe we'll do another podcast about that or an online course. But so I'll ask you the last three questions I always ask all of my guests. What advice would you give a filmmaker or actor just starting out?
I would say know not only what it is you're doing, but why you're doing it and how you want to do it. So the why and the how become infinitely as interesting as the what. And those things can change too. When I was an actor just starting out, I knew that I loved doing it. I knew that I loved being on stage or in front of a camera, but I didn't necessarily have a bigger picture in mind of why I was doing it and how I wanted to move through the world and through the creative. Those are really important pieces of the process. It's not necessarily enough to know that you are compelled or obsessed by our artwork, which many of us are. As soon as you can kind of filter in, well, what is the bigger goal here? Am I trying to help other people? Hopefully. I think once we can put our artwork or any of our work into the context of giving to others and helping others, alleviate suffering, increase happiness, then I think we're doing something much, much bigger than ourselves.
Now, what is the lesson that took you the longest to learn, whether in life or in the film business?
Oh, that's a good one. I think not taking myself so seriously and having fun was a really big lesson. And I still have to remind myself because, we can get so serious. This is my work. This is my art. I have to often remind myself, hey, buddy, have fun. Don't forget.
We're in the film business. I mean, for God's sakes.
Yeah. I mean, how lucky are we to be able to do this? When you get to that set, like we were talking about before, even though you've prepared for days and weeks and months, let it all go and just enjoy. Just have fun. That is a really profound lesson to enjoy the ride, because most of it is this process. And where people get into trouble is looking for fulfillment on the other side of that film release, or that achievement, or that big job, or the relationship. And fulfillment doesn't lie on the other side of any of those things. It exists inside of you first. And if you can cultivate that state of fulfillment, right, and then instead of importing it from the world, export it to the world through your work and through your relationships and achievements, it is infinitely better for you and for everybody else. And it's much more fun.
Absolutely. That's a great lesson. And can you answer this last question? What are 3 of your favorite films of all time?
3 favorite films of all time. They would have to be 2001, Space Odyssey.
Of course.
I'm very partial to Richard Donner's Superman.
Yeah, I love that one.
Because it really started the journey for me. I must have been 4 years old, and there was this character that I loved and admired so much. I wanted to be Superman. And yet there was a part of my brain that for the first time understood that there was this other guy named Christopher Reeve who was playing the role. And, who should I be more thankful to? The character or this guy whose job it was to inspire me? That was a very profound inflection point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do. I love Superman and Superman 2, the Donner cut.
Yes. It's also very good.
We could do without 3 and 4, but 1 and 2.
What was 4? The Quest for Peace?
Yeah. 4 was the Quest for Peace, when he wanted to get rid of all nuclear weapons on the planet, and he fought some sort of golden dude that Lex Luthor created out of a strand of his hair.
Right.
It was done by the Canon Film Company back in the day. So basically it became Warner Brothers sold it off to Canon to make another movie. It was insane. I don't even know how that happened. But anyway, very cool. And that was at 2 or 3?
That was 2.
Mm-hmm.
Number 3, it's so hard, as you know, to narrow it down. I mean,
sure.
I think probably Raiders of the Lost Ark, and not to reference my namesake, but this, I think, for a lot of us at that age, was like the ultimate movie experience. Mm-hmm. I mean, along with Star Wars and the rest of the Lucas Spielberg canon, man, those were exciting times. And the fact that those filmmakers are still working and those characters are still alive
and viable.
Yeah. Save for, Han Solo, spoiler alert.
Yeah, although exactly.
His, the kind of young Han Solo movie also looks like it's going to be cool.
Yeah, it's good. But the character is will be with us for quite some time.
The character will live forever. And, same with Indiana Jones and Superman, and they can reinvent Batman as many times as they want. I will still show up.
I know. Though this last incarnation was a little rough, but that's just me.
It was rough.
That's such a rough movie.
It really speaks to our interest and excitement for archetypes and for story. We are a species that gravitate towards story, and what kind of an important, exciting job that we as filmmakers do to be able to be purveyors story and of consciousness to shift perspective and to make people laugh and cry in those 2 hours in the dark.
And Brad, where can people find you online?
So the film's website is Kensho Film, Kenshofilm.com.
Mm-hmm.
And we're also, of course, now on iTunes, Kensho at the Bedfellow on iTunes. And then my meditation work is mdt8.com. M as in Mary, D as in David, T as in Tom, 8, short for meditate.
Very cool.
And those are the two main hubs that people can track me down.
Fantastic. And I'll put all those links in the show notes for you guys. So definitely check it out. Brad, man, thank you so much. It was an enlightening conversation. No pun intended.
That was great, Alex. I really, really enjoyed it.
Thanks, man. Man, Brad was awesome to talk to. A very enlightening conversation. I actually need to get back into meditation. I need some more peace in my life. It's a little bit crazy for me. And I think finding and centering yourself as an artist and as a filmmaker and as an entrepreneur is very, very important. And I might talk more about that in the coming months and weeks. But I wanted to thank Brad for being on the show. And hopefully this inspires you guys to show you that it can be done. It can be done. And I will be doing something similar with This Is Meg, hopefully in the summer. And you guys will know more about that. And my journey will be documented extensively on that process moving forward as well. And just want to say something real quick before we go. There's 150 episodes of this podcast, and it's been an amazing run so far. I plan to keep going as long as I can physically, but I really thank you guys so much for all your support. And I get on a daily basis just tons of emails and messages on Facebook and Twitter and thanking me for the show and saying that we're an inspiration to a lot of filmmakers out there. And at the end of the day, guys, you are an inspiration to me. And we're in this together, and I truly appreciate it. And as my career continues to move forward in the different adventures that I get into, I will report back from the trenches, as they say, and let you know what I discover on my journey as a filmmaker and as an artist. And hopefully some things I learn along the way will help you guys on your journey. So thank you again so much for all the love, all the support. And don't forget, if you want to get anything or look at anything that we talked about in this episode, head over to indiefilmhustle.com/150 for the show notes. And guys, keep that hustle going. Keep that dream alive. And I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Hustle podcast at indiefilmhustle.com. That's INDIEFILMHUSTLE.com.